G'day guys, welcome back to the Rugby League Guru podcast, our final weekend preview for the season, brought to you by Neds. Jump onto the Neds app and follow along with our bets for this weekend, also for the Kangaroos games and whatnot during the off-season. Shout out to Neds, they've been fantastic partners in season 2024, allowing us to bring you guys all the content that we have this season. As I said, jump on the app, make an account, make sure you follow along with all of our profiles. Baggy Greens are up for grabs this week on About Even. Sebo has taken the the Penrith Panthers as his hot seat tip. Sorry, he's taking the Melbourne Storm, not the Panthers. I'm all at sea here. I think the Panthers win this grand final. We'll get to that soon, but part of me might be going for the Melbourne Storm all of a sudden. So maybe it's good that my bets have been hedged. Bringing in my partner in crime who found my little stumble there quite hilarious, may I add. It's a pleasure as always. Kat Haddad, how are you?
You just called me by my actual government name. That's insane. You never do that. For those who didn't know, I do actually have a name that's not Kathmandu.
Occasionally you hear it. Normally when I'm in a corner and I'm embarrassed after I stumbled. Wasn't as bad as the stumble I had on the last podcast, though, to be fair.
No.
That was one of my great ones of all time.
I've done a bit of extra editing today for you.
Yeah.
He's getting his money's worth out of my production skills today.
It's not very often you need to, but when you do, you're almost cutting seizures out of my podcast just quietly, because that was a shocker before. I was all over the place. So
yeah, it's all right. You're a bit rattled.
rattled.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it still over Lockie Galvin?
It's very noisy in here, don't worry.
Yeah.
All right, Kat, we have got the grand finals this weekend, the NRL and the NRLW. I personally cannot wait for this weekend. It's going to be an absolute cracker. We'll kick off with the NRL first. Who we got? Where are we? What's doing?
Well, it's going to be Sunday, 7:30 p.m. kickoff at Accor Stadium, Storm v Panthers, 1v2. Talk to me about it.
Now, before we do, I want to ask you a question. 7:30 p.m. grand final. Would you prefer an afternoon grand final, or are you a night grand final person?
Well, the women's is at 3:50-ish,
Yep.
I believe. So I think that's perfect. A nice arvo of women's footy rolls into the men's grand final. I'm here for it.
Because we used to have grand finals at 3 p.m. once upon a time, obviously daytime grand finals. I'm sort of torn which one I prefer. I kind of like the twilight, maybe a 5:30.
Yeah, it could be a little earlier than 7:30.
I think so. I think the other thing as well with the grand final is that kicks off at 7:30, it finishes at 10:30 or so. If you want to go out after and celebrate at midnight, it's a public holiday. Becomes quite difficult, as I've learned the hard way after many grand finals.
Well, and you'd be in a similar boat.
Yep.
I think there are many years where our birthdays have fallen on grand final weekend.
Correct, yep.
And so I think when you talk about going out, you're probably talking about a bit of birthday celebrations. Am I right?
Potentially.
Yeah.
Potentially.
I tend to hold my birthday celebrations to the following weekend, which is what I've done this year. So I'm real committed to just being present for the NRL and the NRLW.
That's what I wanted to hear.
Yeah.
That's good. All right, let's get on to the game. Look, I've spoken a lot this week, guys. I think the Penrith Panthers are going for their fourth premiership in a row. I think they find a way to get the job done here. I personally, and I kind of feel like a bit of an idiot because I think I'm the only one that seemingly can't see it. I can't believe the Panthers aren't favourites in this grand final. It has blown me away. The game's being played in Sydney. The Panthers will sleep in their own bed. The Melbourne Storm coming up here. The Melbourne Storm losing Nas. For the Melbourne Storm too, I look at them and, you know, it's not like they're farewelling anyone. They're not farewelling anyone that's overly major in this squad. I look at the Penrith Panthers, the emotion around Jerome Luai, Taruva, like those two guys, very popular guys in this squad, obviously more so Jerome Luai, but I also just look at James Fisher-Harris and, you know, if I'm Ivan Cleary, I am getting every single player as they walk out of that tunnel to fucking shake Fisher-Harris's hand and look him in the eye. And I just think he is one of those guys that you just get up for. And I think the Penrith Panthers, him leading their forward pack, I just think they're going to be too strong for Melbourne. You know, I look at who's got the stronger forward pack. For me, the Penrith Panthers. Which forward pack has performed better on the big stages over the years? The Penrith Panthers. Not to mention you take out Nas from the Melbourne Storm side. They've had to replace him with Lazarus, who I really like, but he's played 6 games of first grade in his career. I mean, and then, you know, the forward pack's better. Who's got the better kicking game? For me, it's Nathan Cleary. by quite some distance. Husey and Munster are very good, but Nath Cleary is the best kicking game in rugby league. Which outside backs are better coming out of their own end? It's the Penrith Panthers. Once again, I don't know. I feel like I'm looking at something different to other people at the moment because I am so confident the Penrith Panthers get the job done here. I don't think they smash the Melbourne Storm by any means. I think that it will be a suffocate job, similar to what most Penrith Panthers games are. Most games, they're able to get to the last 30 minutes and blow teams away. I don't think it'll be like that with Melbourne, but I do think Penrith will be on top. I think they'll keep them camped down in their own end for the vast majority of the game. We'll talk about in more detail how and why when we get to Coach's Clipboard, which will be out tomorrow for all of you guys to consume. But I feel really confident on the Penrith Panthers. And if you've been smart over the last few days, you've been able to get them at about $2 on Neds. I think that value is absolutely unreal. I know that they didn't play their greatest game of footy last week, but I look at that game and honestly, a few drop balls, a few wayward passes from Mitch Kenny out of dummy half, you tend not to see that very often from the Panthers. I don't think you'll see it twice in a row. And for me, they weren't great in attack, and people are sort of talking like the Panthers were really off last week. And granted, in attack, they weren't great. In defence, they were still tremendous. And the Penrith Panthers have taught me over the last few years the best defensive team will win. And I still think the Panthers are the best defensive team in this competition, let alone in this grand final. So I feel very confident on the Penrith Panthers. I think they get the job done. I think there's a lot more emotion going into this one. I've said a few times this season, and you've been witness to it, Kat, I won't be tipping the Panthers to win the grand final next year. I think they come back to the pack next season. But I still think this year they are the best team in the competition. And I think as well, we spoke about it earlier this morning, Kat, about that winning mentality. And I think the Panthers, they have still got a grudge with the Melbourne Storm from that original grand final in 2020. They're still holding on to that. I have no doubt whatsoever they remember that. I've read articles this week about how the Panthers have spoken about, obviously after the 2020 grand final, the Jerome Hughes video of him sort of taking the piss out of the Penrith area. They took that personally. There's the video. You can literally go watch it on the tapes of that grand final of Cam Munster absolutely laying into Leota after that grand final. And I just think Penrith are going to have too much for him. I really do. And once again, I almost feel like I'm an idiot because no one really seems to agree with me of just how confident I am with them. But I think they're the better football team, and I think they'll get it done. And I think people are sleeping on the impact of losing Nas. Where do you sit, Kat?
I mean, I'm obviously heavily influenced by you and the conversations that we've
You're
had.
Sort of trapped in here all day, aren't you? Listening to my shit. Yeah.
I am trapped in here. So I do lean towards the Panthers, not just because of the things you've said, but I think it's very justified. There's so many elements to this game for them. The context of it being Jerome Luai and Taruva's last game and Fisher Harris's last game for them. And there's those elements, but then it's also the defensive stats.
Yep.
You can't argue with those. Like, those are facts that they are the best defensive team in the comp, and you've always said that the best defensive team will win, and we've seen that time and time again.
Yep.
But I also think Panthers in finals are just different gravy, and in a grand final they are different. They will do anything and everything to win this. And I also think people don't give the Sharks enough credit for how much they did test the Panthers last week. They played better than I think the Roosters played against the Melbourne Storm.
Completely agree.
So it's that recency bias of coming in, looking at the score lines, looking at the general performance, top line. Sure, it did look like Melbourne were the stronger team, but I think Sharks played a lot better than people have given them credit for. And so they really tested the Panthers, but look at that second half. The Panthers came out dominant. They would have been fatigued. It didn't matter. They came out and they won that, and they won that fair and square. So I think we can expect something similar from the Panthers this week.
And I think if I'm jumping over the other side of the fence and I'm trying to find the arguments for why the Melbourne Storm win this, like I can find plenty of them.
There's so many reasons why they could win this.
Starts with their halfback. They've got the Dally M medalist
course.
there. They've got the Dally M hooker, and in my opinion, the best hooker in rugby league. If there's one guy that can overcome losing the momentum of Nas, I think it is Harry Grant, and I'm not denying that at all. I've said for a long time, I think he'll be the second best hooker we've ever seen, and this could be a huge game in the career of Harry Grant. But I just... The other thing, when I look at the Melbourne Storm and I compare these two sides and just individuals, for me, I think the two hardest guys to prepare for, one is Cam Munster. You just, like I've said it before, Cam Munster doesn't know what Cam Munster's going to do next, so I don't know how the fuck you prepare for him. I'll tell you who I think is the other one, and this will sound crazy to people that this is the guy to identify. Tyrant Wishart. When he comes onto the field, he's going to bring a real burst of energy, one that I don't think Brad Schneider will bring. I don't think Schneider even gets on the field if Nathan Cleary is okay, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I think he is coverage there simply because of Nath. But I look at Wishart and I know he'll come on the field at some point, and I personally think he will just come on and play a lock forward role, which means Craig Bellamy, before he goes on the field, will give him a license and go, hey, go out there and play footy. Go and just sniff out some tired bodies and just take them on. I think Tyrant Wishart and Cam Munster are the two hardest guys to prepare for in this game because you don't know what they're going to do. And like me and my mates joke about it with Tyrant Wishart. You know, he's going to get out there and he'll throw 4 dummies in a row. And that's probably what he'll fucking do. But teams just can't stop the kid. He just keeps on coming up with plays this season. It wouldn't shock me if he does play a major role in this. I think Jerome Hughes has been tremendous this year. He's been fantastic. But I think you do sort of know to some extent what you're going to get out of Hughesy. I think if you do enough tape on Hughesy, stopping it is another challenge. But you know what you're going to get from Hughesy. I think Cam Munster's the one that's so hard to prepare for.
He's unpredictable.
And Wishart's similar. It's the unpredictability.
Yeah.
And for me, you know, I talk about it all year with these two teams. If you want to beat them, you need to make them uncomfortable. And it's hard. It's so much easier for me to sit on my ass here and say it instead of actually, you know, going out and doing it on the weekend. Because in order to make these teams uncomfortable, you have to take risks, which means you risk turning the football over, which means you risk giving this team an opportunity to absolutely bury you, which 9 times out of 10 they do. We've seen that in the last 4 weeks. We saw that last weekend, time and time again with both these sides. But I just think Melbourne, they have got those two guys that are so unpredictable. You know, I would also say to the Melbourne Storm that they've got this forward pack where, you know, they've lost their big guy. And I said it yesterday, Kat, I thought there'd be a lot of people having question marks around this Melbourne Storm pack. For whatever fucking reason, there isn't.
Yeah.
I can't really get out. And I thought that'd be some inspiration that Bellamy had used. And maybe he's playing me in the change rooms because I'm the only one that's got question marks around it. But I thought there'd be a lot of inspiration off that, but there doesn't seem to be. I think it's the way it's played out with the media this week. I think it's gone the other way. If I'm Ivan Cleary, I'm going, fuck, have a listen to everyone. You're the outsiders. You have been all year. These guys haven't been in a grand final in 3 years. You've won 3 in those 3 years. You've beaten them most years to get there as well. Like
I think, you know, it's fair to say though that this Storm side is the first that meets these Penrith Panthers face to face, almost equal in their ability to win, and that's what makes this grand final so good. Is that it could go either way.
Yep.
I wonder if the Nas stuff is because they did spend a portion of the season without him as well, and they were able to win without him. So
yeah, for sure,
there's less of a concern there. Like obviously, he's a great miss for that side, but they can play without him.
Yeah, for sure. And you know what? Even more so to your point, Kat, they beat Penrith there without him in round 1. Another thing that this Penrith side has taught me, and they're so unique in that, is that September football is just completely different to any other month of the year. Yeah. And especially when you're playing this Panthers side, it's all good and well to knock them over in March, April. Honestly, when it comes to the Panthers, I don't give a fuck when else you beat them. Beat them in September. That's all that counts. And no team's been able to beat them in September over the last couple of years. The South Sydney Rabbitohs beat them, I think that was 3 years ago now. And I think in that game, Leota and Dylan Edwards were out. They were missing players. They only just beat them. The last team to beat them was this Melbourne Storm side, but that was a Cam Smith-led side, very different. Jesse Bromwich, Brandon Smith,
and let's just not forget that is also fuel for this game on Sunday.
100%.
That's going to motivate them because there's a vengeance there.
We spoke about it earlier today as well, Kat, on the podcast, talking about how, like, what's so impressive for me is these two sides is that they really haven't had that much motivation because no one's kicked them in the teeth. No one's really doubted them. They've always got pats on the back and compliments for how consistent and how good they are. I now look at this Panthers side and go, hey, Melbourne beat you in the last grand final. Melbourne's beaten you twice this year. They're the favourites. Like, I look at Penrith, I go, fuck, they've got all the motivation in the world.
They're the ones with the motivation.
Jerome Hughes just got the Dally M medal. He's the one getting all the raps. Harry Grant just got Dally M hooker of the year.
They were minor premiers as well.
Jerome Luai just missed out on 5'8" of the year. Like, I just think, and, you know, I'd be saying to Liam Martin, hey, they reckon Eli Katoa's the best second rower in the game. He hasn't done anything on the big stages yet, but he's the best second rower apparently. Like, I just think there's so much fuel, and like even the front rowers for Penrith, Leota and Fisher Harris, They've been the most dominant for years. They never win shit.
Yeah.
I just
Interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, Jerome Luai as well.
Who would have thought that? But that says a lot. It does say a lot about this Melbourne side. Penrith are coming in as the underdogs, and they've won 3 in a row.
100%.
And that says a lot about the quality of these two teams.
Yep, bloody oath it does. This one's going to be an absolute cracker. I'm going to say Penrith win this one by 8 points. If you had to give me a points margin, what do you sort of reckon? What's your ballpark?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be a tussle right till the end. I think there could be less than 8 in it. Yeah. I'll go by 6.
6, yeah, I like that. As far as Clive Churchill medal, I've said it a few times, and there's plenty of smokies to talk about. If I had to take my pick, it would be Nath Cleary. I think he will get the job done here. I think that when it comes to a Clive Churchill medal, the narrative matters. And I'm sure at some point Nath's going to have to grab this shoulder. He's going to have to get through defensive work. The question mark is, and that's the other aspect that I'm sure there's a lot of people tipping the Melbourne Storm just because they're not sure if Nath gets through this game.
Based on what could happen.
What could happen, 100%. Yeah. And it's 100% fair. He's grabbing his shoulder last week. He had to come off early. I get that 100%. Injuries played a role all year for every single team. Nath is carrying something, as are most guys that will be playing in this game. But I just think the narrative of Nath going for his second in a row, finally getting over the top of Melbourne, didn't play Origin this year. He'll come out with a big game. He'd be my favourite. My smoky would be Isaiah Yeo. He'd be my next choice. Those two. Who would you lean towards, Kat?
Yeah, it's hard to look past Isaiah Yeo in terms of the whole narrative element and him just being such a reliable captain for this Penrith side. And Nathan Cleary deserves it as well. I think his ability is just – there are very few players in the game these days that I think have the ability to turn a game around as an individual. Yep. And Nathan Cleary is that player. And you don't come by those very often. They're generational talents.
Yep.
And I think we're very lucky to be seeing him do his thing. And we'll look back on his career for many, many years. We'll be talking about him for many, many years. So I want to see him perform well, and I want to see him take out awards like the Clive Churchill medal, because obviously Dally M, there's so many things that restrict a guy like him from qualifying for a Dally M and for being in the running for it. But the fact that he could get a Clive Churchill in a grand final game is perfect.
Well, his third Clive and his second. Yeah, crazy.
Yeah.
Were you talking about Nathan?
Yeah.
Sorry, can you timestamp that? I got lost thinking about something.
That's all right. I'll just finish what I said, so just say what you said.
Yeah. The other one that I would throw in there, Kat, that I think the storyline would just be incredible. Mm-hmm. I think we all forget Jerome Luai last year. He had to come off with 30 minutes to go. He wasn't on the field when they made that big comeback, and he copped a lot of criticism for it and all that sort of shit. He's since signed with the Tigers. For me, Nath Cleary and Isaiah Yeo, they are the leaders of this side, but the heart of them, I think, is Jerome Luai. I think it has been for a long time. And in his last game, fuck, I would love to see Jerome pick up a Clive.
Jerome embodies the Panthers.
He is.
And that's what I find so interesting about how he'll make this transition to the Tigers, because he is just such a Panther. Yep. But, I mean, to be fair, we could have said the same about Stephen Crichton, and he made the transition to being a Bulldog seamless.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I'd love to see something like that happen for Jerome Luai in his last game.
I think the difference between Critter and Luai, and who's a better leader, it's Stephen Crichton, but Jerome Luai just brings that arrogance.
He's got the mongrel in him.
He's got the mongrel in him. Yeah. And he's, I think when we talk about the word arrogance in rugby league, people have a very negative connotation. Like if you're going to be successful in this competition, you need to be arrogant.
I'm sorry, I'm not building a team of non-arrogant
people.
I'm filling my team with arrogant people that want to work together.
Yeah. And you look back through the history of the game, the greatest teams of all time, which we're going to put the Panthers side by side, like the Brisbane Broncos, most arrogant fuckers of all time back in the day. They had to be. The Canberra Raiders, they like Meninga, Daly, Clyde, Stewart, they'd look across the other side and go, fucking beat anyone that's there. And I've heard Matty Johns talk in his podcast about how he used to stand there at the kickoff looking across at them and just think, they know they can beat the shit out of me. And I know they can beat the shit out of me. And I can tell in their body language they know I'm fucking petrified right now. Like, it's that arrogance that I think you need. And I think Jerome has brought that so well. And for me, I think it's why we won Origin this year, because we had that attitude.
I couldn't agree more. And I also think it's a huge factor missing from this Tigers side. And I think him moving down there, I didn't mean to say down there, like down the ladder. That was bad. But
Down the road.
Down the road.
Yep.
Him moving to the Tigers, I think it would be really interesting to see how that mentality can contribute to that culture and boost them up, because I don't think many of those Tigers are walking out there feeling like that.
No way.
Yeah.
No. I think it's going to be super entertaining. I think if you're looking at the other side of the park too, I think Cam Munster is that guy for Melbourne. He's the guy that I don't care what the odds are against me. Like, you go back to that 2020 Origin. Queensland just had no right to be in that series, let alone win the fucking thing. And Cam Munster just goes, fuck it, give me the ball.
Yeah.
I'll make it work. And I love those sort of guys, and I think it will be those guys that decide this game. Penrith by 8, Nath Cleary for a Clive Churchill for me in this one. Kat, let's jump to the NRLW because we've got another cracking game coming our way here. It's been a very interesting storyline for both sides going into it. Obviously, the Broncos, I think they'd won 7 in a row until last week.
Yeah.
Came up with a loss. The Roosters, they were favourites last week, but they had to overcome the Newcastle Knights.
Yeah, the premiers of last year.
Premiers last year, I think, it's just such a strong side. So the Sharkies, they're sort of the fairy tale story, aren't they?
They are. But I think before we even do that,
Here we go.
just wanted to bring up my tips for last week.
Yeah.
2 from 2. I said the Sharks would beat the Broncos and I said the Roosters would beat the Knights. How were your tips?
Yeah, 0 from 2 from me. I'm getting used to that. You absolutely nailed those last week. And I thought I was a bit spicy going for the Knights upset. And I thought you were idiotic for taking Cronulla, to be honest with you. You nailed them. You absolutely nailed them.
Yeah, well, and I think that makes for all the more exciting grand final because you've got two teams who, I mean, the Sharks especially, they were in 4th position and now they find themselves in a grand final. They've had an awesome season, a few ups and downs, but for the most part, they've put on an absolute show for their fans this season. And we got the insight. We went into the club. We met the girls right before the season kicked off. We saw how strong that culture was. They're all besties. We were talking to a few of them on camera, but the rest were sitting behind the camera in a little huddle all together, having a laugh. And every time someone arrived, they all hugged. Like, there's just a really nice sense of camaraderie between the girls. I don't know this Roosters side personally, but from what I've seen, definitely a similar culture going on at that club as well. And so I think, and they've obviously got some great leaders at that club too, just like the Sharks do in Tiana Penitani, and we've talked about her a little bit already, but I think it makes for a really interesting grand final.
Yeah, I think this one's going to be an absolute cracker. There's a couple of Sharkies leaving the end of the season too. Taylor Preston, who when we were there, it was very evident just how much of a popular member of this side she was. I think the Roosters win, but I think they win in a tight, low-scoring affair. I reckon we'll get like a 14-12 or something like that. I reckon this one will be a cracker. If I'm the Sharkies, once again, I would look at the Dally M's last night and I'd say, fuck, have a look at how many Roosters are in this team of the year. We got one player in there, and I would be using that as my inspiration going into this grand final. Yeah. Everyone's doubted us. Everyone's ruled them out. You have a look at the girls that the Roosters have brought back over the last 2 weeks. Surges, Isabel Kelly, superstars, just out and out, absolute superstars. Aitken came back a few weeks ago. I think the Roosters will be too strong.
Yeah.
But I think the Sharks put up one hell of a mighty fight. I reckon they lose by 2 points in a very tight, low-scoring affair. I would love to hear you give the Roosters the kiss of death here, but I'll let you take it away. Who are you tipping?
Well, you know what? There's absolutely nothing to lose in it, so I am going to tip the Sharks.
Fuck yeah, good.
Because why not? I'm really impressed with how they've performed this season. The Roosters set a standard for themselves over the last few seasons, and they have fulfilled that yet again, whereas I feel like the Sharks, they kicked it up a notch, and they've shown that they're real contenders, and I think that is a motivation in itself. They've obviously found another level this year, and I think that they can keep that and that they can show the Roosters this Sunday as well what they've got. And to your point about Taylor Preston leaving, she heads off to the Bulldogs. She's going to be one of the leaders in that side as well. But I think I know she's been posting throughout the week. They are really excited about this final and they know what it means. And we look at that underdog mentality. I think they've got nothing to lose here, and I think that they will just come in so strong against the Roosters, who have done it before and they're experienced, yes, but they don't have that same mentality as these Sharkies who've never been here before.
Yeah, I agree, and that's why I reckon the Sharkies give it a red hot crack. I was just having a look at some of the odds on Neds. Sharkies are at $3.35 here, which is very good value in a 2-horse race in a grand final where it's just all in the line. The thing that I'd be showing the Sharkies though, the Karen Murphy medal, which is the equivalent of the Dally M medal. These are the favourites for it. Aitken, Isabel Kelly, Surges, Bremner, Kelleher and Elliott. The top 6 players are all Roosters there. You can get Tiana at $11. You can get Emma Tonegato at $13. Emma's my pick there. If the Sharkies are to do this, which I agree with you, Kate, you're slowly starting to convince me around just quietly that they get up for this one. There's some value on a superstar like Emma Tonegato, someone that is, obviously a star in the NRLW, has been a star for rugby sevens and whatnot. She's one of those players that I think is just slightly bigger than the game a little bit on her day.
Yeah.
Tonegato at $13. I love that value. They've got a very good forward pack. The Sharkies, they're farewelling a few as well. Dimmick going over the Canterbury Bulldogs as well. So there'll be a lot of emotion in this for the Sharkies. And once again, I think the beauty of this is for them, all the pressures on the Roosters, all the expectations on the Roosters. No one outside of Kat Haddad thought the Sharkies would be there. No one outside of Kat Haddad has given them all that much hope this weekend. All the inspiration is sitting there in the odds and with everyone's comments this week. You're really starting to convince me around. I think they put in a big performance. I think the Roosters get home in a tight one, but I would love to see the Sharkies get up here.
Yeah, I think regardless of who takes this one out, it will be tight.
Oh, it's going to be unreal. All right, guys, there we have it. I am taking the Panthers and the Roosters in a tight one to win the NRLW. Panthers in the NRL. Kat has got the Panthers in the NRL and the Sharkies for the upset in the NRLW, which I absolutely love. Make sure you jump onto the Neds app to follow along with all of our bets this weekend and for the rest of the footy season, including all of the internationals. The end of the season will be there for all of those.
Chances are you're about to lose. For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen or visit the website.